If you're wondering how recent land bid will affect you, this is the podcast for you. Hey, hi everybody, welcome back to GetListed podcast, and today we are into a very interesting topic, which is government land sales. But of course, before we dive deeper, I think we need to firstly understand how government land sales work. So, how does government land sales work?
So for every 6 months, right, URA will actually announce a list of land sites for sale. So these are known as your government land sales program. So interested developers that wish to acquire this plot of land for residential projects, for example, to build like new condos, then they will actually bid the land through an open tender. So developers will then put in like a blind bid, and the land will be awarded to developer with the highest bid lah.
But does it mean that, let's say, if for this tender you are the sole and highest bidder, you will definitely win this tender?
So for every plot of land the government releases through such GLS, so there's always a reserve price that you will need to hit.
I think this one is very important, because I think there's a lot of misconception in the market, especially for consumer lah. They think that developers today are actually inflating the launch prices. But the fact is that they have this reserve price that they have to meet, and this reserve price is being set by the government as a base price for the piece of land.
I think very importantly is that a lot of people have this idea that developers are trying to push the property price up. But the thing is, we need to think it in the business point of view. If today I'm a seller, for example, let's say I'm someone that opens a grocery store. I know that the market rate, people are paying maybe, $1 for an egg. Would I deliberately want to drive the prices of eggs in the market? No, ma. Actually, if I confidently, let's say, purchase a dozen of eggs for certain pricing, I will be more or less confident that I will be able to sell them in the market for a certain price. So I think this applies for the developer as well. Whenever they bid for a piece of land, even though when government already set a reserve price, I'm sure the developers also have a benchmark to work with. There's certain price that they wouldn't pay above.
Yeah.
So whenever they place a bid, they're really confident that at this price, how much am I going to sell for?
Yeah, I agree. So like the reserve price basically just serves as like a internal guide to assess like if the tender bids are reflective of the fair market value of the land. Yeah, and also I think like more than just supplying land for sales, right? I think government also play like a very crucial role to like moderate the supply of the land available for development.
Yeah. Because I think if we were to reference back the GLS supply from early 2000 to current, right? So I think we have seen periods of prolonged lack of GLS, during the early 2000, because there was like the Asia financial crisis, there's SARS, there's .com bubble, that kind of issues. So that point of time, there was a lot of GLS. Then shortly after the global financial crisis, 2009, right? Wow, I think because there was prolonged period of no GLS land, then suddenly government released a lot of land, probably in the period of 2010 to 2012. So I think all this inconsistency in supply also means there were instances of oversupply, instances of undersupply, actually causing like huge fluctuation in prices lah. I mean, personally for me, I feel supply stability plays a crucial role actually in dictating how a developer does their bidding also.
I think what you mentioned is super important, because a lot of people who are just observing the market or have been reading charts of any articles, or property agents, usually we have this chart of private property like how the prices have been going. I think most commonly what people are looking at is like what you mentioned, 2009, 2010, 2011, 1213 is when the prices are going up very steeply. And then in 2013, when TDSR was introduced and other cooling measures, then prices starts to
stabilize, or there's some
corrections.
Correction.
So a lot of people are using that as a reference in today's context. But the thing is, today we are already post-cooling measure, which means if you realize that if you guys have been noticing all the cooling measures that was announced, government always place this sentence inside. Have you guys noticed?
I think it's something to do with sustainability lah.
Correct. It's always calling sustainable growth, which means the government wants the price to grow in a very sustainable manner, which is also by limiting the GLS or moderating the GLS. So because of this, we are in a more controlled environment.
I think if you were to look at some of the GLS supply coming into the market, I mean, for maybe past 5 to 6 years, I think you are seeing something more of like a consistent pattern, right? So every 2 years we see some up and downs in terms of the supply. But generally, I think it is to a point whereby there isn't too much of an oversupply, undersupply. So I think that really provided some stability in terms of prices for the past few years or so.
Correct. So one reference point on how can a consumer keep track on the supply coming into the market is actually going to URA's quarterly report. If you go into URA's quarterly report, you can actually see the unsold new properties in the market right now. So if you log in now, you can just Google this URA private residential quarterly report along this line. You can see for the past 2-3 years or 4 years, the unsold supply has been pretty similar for the past few years. What does this mean? This means that the number of land that's released or the number of units that are planned to come into the market is actually already in control. So with a steady inflow of supply and of course the same amount of demand, demand is very subjective, but which means that everything is controlled, right?
Yeah.
I think this is what we want and what government wants as well. So I think looking back at the successful bids, I think very important. Okay, example for we as agents, we are used to looking at data. So example, when the news come out, first thing we will do once land bid is out, blast group chat. Then first after you blast group chat, there's one thing we will do. We will start to use calculator. We will start to calculate how much will be the future launch price.
Yeah.
But the thing is not everybody is aware of this.
So maybe I can share some of the information regarding the recent land bid. Then maybe Jenelle can share with us how do we, us as agent, how do we come up with the estimated launch price. So maybe I'll just go first. In 7 November, right, there's this few tender for this 3 site that closes. So number 1 is actually this Clementi Avenue 1 tender site. Okay, so actually it's being awarded to actually MCL land. So total for this tender, there were actually 6 bidder. So the winning bid actually came in at 1,250 PSF per plot ratio. Okay, so then the second plot is actually Pine Grove Parcel B, being awarded to MCL again and Sina Mas land. So this one, there's only 3 bidder and the winning bid came in at 1,223 PSF per plot ratio. Then the last one, I think is the Lorong 1 Toa Payoh site. So winning bid came from CDL. Okay, so again, this one, there's only 3 bidder. Winning bid is actually 1,360 PSF per plot ratio. And I think this one is, I think, quite surprising because the winning bid, right, is close to 20% higher than the second bidder.
So the second bid was at
1,152 PSF per plot ratio. So it's like almost a 20 plus above the second bidder. So it's quite a big margin.
So I think this shows that CDL really wanted that piece of land.
So another another bid that actually came in way back actually in September was actually the Woodland GLS site.
This is the most interesting GLS for 2023. To me, this is the highlight of the year. Because Woodlands correct. No? So I mean, it's been a while since we have saw any activity in the north side, be it Yishun, Sembawang, Woodlands, because these are the areas that mostly we see EC coming up. So for me, when this news came out, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
If you do a calculation, do you guys know how much they need to sell it for? Maybe Zane, you can share with us a bit.
So anyway, for this Champion Way GLS site, right? So total, there's actually 6 bid. Winning bid actually went to City Development, CDL, with a winning bid of actually 904 PSF. So far, I think for the past few years, this is one of the GLS site which has one of the lowest PSF. Okay, so maybe Jenelle can share for us like how us as agent, how do we come up with the estimated launch pricing?
So first we have to understand like how all these bid prices actually translate to estimated launch prices. So like typically in a developer's playbook, right? So the land costs actually already account for about 57 to 65% of a developer's expenses. Then we also need to factor in like 20% of construction, the balance like miscellaneous costs like your legal, your interest on loan, tax, marketing, all this. Yeah, so we can see like for example like in Lorong 1 Toa Payoh, right? So the recent land bid price was about 1360. Yeah, then the break even is about 2305. And let's say we are taking into an average of a 20% markup. So we will be probably looking at a 2766 launch price lah. Yeah.
Wow, that is actually pretty high for a Toa Payoh site.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's the interesting part. If you were to use this formula of what Jenelle just shared with us, so for example, if I use Champions Way again, so like what I say, Champions Way GLS is something that took me by surprise. Okay, because of course we know like example, the Lentor area, dairy farm, this area have been commanding quite a good price in terms of 1,008, 1,009 per square feet during launch period. So now it comes to Woodlands, which means based on your calculation, the break-even price for this site for Champions Way is going to be 1,687 per square feet. If we mark up by 10%, it's going to be 1,855 per square feet.
Yeah.
If the developer mark up by 20%, it's going to be 2,024. 2,024 per square feet for Champions Way.
For for Woodland.
Champion, no?
Champion.
Really, it's champion. Right now. But to me, there must be a reason why the developer is so confident in bidding for this land. Because all developers are out to win. Because developers bid for land so that they have things to sell. Without inventory, the developers
Got nothing to sell.
nothing to sell.
Yeah.
Correct. So most importantly, now we need to know, based on all these land bid, how will it impact prices?
So I think we have to look from consumer point of view, right? It's like, for example, Bitcoin. Like, do you all trade
So
Bitcoin?
today
Don't
it's
talk about
trading
Bitcoin.
at- Now it's about 40 over 1,000 USD.
Yeah. So like, if today you have information like Bitcoin is going to be trading at 100 over 1,000, next week, and now it's trading about 40K. So will you guys still go and buy?
Of course lah. If I can buy
If
today,
I'm very sure that next week is gonna be 100K, I buy all in.
Yeah.
All in.
All in.
Confirm buy
40K all in.
Yeah.
Because guaranteed 100K ma.
Yeah.
Yeah, guaranteed, right?
Yeah. So it's exactly we will all buy in ma. So if you don't buy, then you will miss this chance. And then next time that you want to buy, you are probably entering about 100K already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like the same thing for properties, like for houses. So if today most of the outskirt projects are already asking about 2,000 PSF, right? So for most consumer today, even if they can afford, I think they also find it very hard to really accept this pricing. So because there's nothing to justify this price is reasonable ma.
Correct.
And that's the reason why a lot of consumers are sitting on the fence. So for example, I think we also mentioned this in our previous video or our other videos. We also mentioned that recently, due to recent sales performance of certain launches, for example, Lake Garden Residences, recently there's one more at Lentor. It's called Hillock Green. So they're all at the 20+%, 27 to 30% mark.
Yeah.
So this is exactly the group of people that you mentioned that finding it very hard to accept this pricing because there's nothing to justify ma.
Correct.
Why should I pay this price?
Correct.
But there's also a group of people that accept it and buy it.
I think more importantly, if we were to understand and make use of all these land bid news, right? And knowing the upcoming project launches are going to be even more expensive. Let's say we are looking at 2005 to 2006 PSF. So would this actually give them the assurance that the prices they are paying today are actually not at an all-time high? Yeah.
So basically what you mean is that example for Champions Way. So we know that if the CDL is CDL, right?
CDL.
If CDL marks up the price from break even for about 20%, they're going to sell about 2K per square feet, which makes it more reasonable for people to accept other developments selling at $1,008, $1,009, $2,000 per square feet. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Which means basically is using future price tag to compare with old price tag.
Existing.
We call it old price tag or existing price tag.
Yeah. And I think also, we have to look it from the developer's point of view also lah. So whenever there's a new land bid, right? So it will also affect the pricing strategy of the current projects in the market. So I think a very good example we can look at is Dairy Farm Residences and Botany.
Dairy Farm Residences, the one that
Very
recently,
famous,
recently very famous, the most famous development in
Singapore.
October, November for these 2 months.
Yeah.
Headline.
Yeah.
So for you guys who are
Not
not
aware.
sure, not aware what happened, basically the developer increased the maintenance fee by how many times?
3-4.
Threefold upon
When they
TOP.
quote 300, it actually became 900.
900. But I remember because we do have friends or even agents that bought Dairy Farm Residences. So basically, they started a petition, they submitted it to developer, and developer ended up lowering down the
Probably from 300 to maybe about 400 lah.
lower about 20-30% lower lah.
A lot lower.
Yeah,
From
a lot
900 become 400.
Yeah.
That's a lot of
Yeah, I
difference.
mean they just sidetrack a bit lah.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to this Dairy Farm and Botany.
Yeah, so like when Dairy Farm first launched, right, it was launched in like late 2019. So it was at an average price of about 1,005 to 1,006 PSF lah. And it was actually initially moving pretty slow, I would say.
It was very slow.
very slow.
Yeah.
Very
Because it was a, like I say, new price tag, people find it hard to accept.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think eventually it picked up right during COVID period.
Yeah, so even during COVID period, like the prices are still stagnant lah. Like developers are pricing it very sensitively.
Yeah.
But when like Botany, the land bid was announced like in March 2022, right? So we can see like from the graph over here, from the table over here, like the developer of Dairy Farm actually increased their price
Yeah.
like within a short span of 1 month.
So basically, just to give a quick context of what happened. So back then, Dairy Farm, that was the only project for sale. So basically, the buyers that goes to the show flat, they need to pay the highest per square feet in that whole area itself. So it's not easy for them to
To accept.
accept.
Yeah. So even in so you can see from the chart, right? So in February, right, some of the two bidders were actually asking for probably around 1,007 PSF thereabout. But immediately after the announcement of the Botany land bid, right, the developer actually increased the price quite significantly lah. So just 1 month later, some of the two bidders are actually transacting at 1,880 PSF, close to 1,009. Yeah. So I think from this point, right, you can see that why do the developer dare to increase their price? Because they understand, if those not willing to pay 1,007, if now they still don't enter, correct, next time they are going to be at least paying $2,000 PSF, for a similar two bidder.
So same for the buyers.
Yeah. So even if I ask them to pay 1,008, 1,009, actually it's still cheaper,
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think this is the same logic as what I mentioned in terms of the selling eggs.
Yeah.
Basically, today I'm the only one selling an egg for $2. So maybe I bought 12 eggs and it's moving so slowly. I'm left with 10 of them. Suddenly, a new grocery store opens opposite me, and now their eggs are selling for $3. So can I easily sell mine at $2.50? Will people buy?
Yours will seem cheap, still cheap.
And that's when people who have been thinking, hey, should I buy this egg from Zacson or not? Then they will just pay
Yeah.
$2.50. Then they will start to say, I should have bought
Because
it when it was
there's a reference for them to justify.
correct. Then they will be
price.
thinking, I should have bought the egg from him when it was $2. So this is usually how land sales impact everybody, developers and consumer. So what are some of the trends that we have seen from developers recently?
So I think you have to look back at just now those few land bids that we actually mentioned about, right? Some of the things that we actually noticed in terms of trend. Okay, number one is some of the land parcel that are actually situated within heartland, right, usually garner very strong participation from
Heartland, like
okay, so like the one that you mentioned was
Clementi.
Clementi, and then we also have the Champion Way, the
Yeah.
Woodland one. So all these are very heartland area.
Yeah.
So why are heartland so popular?
Basically, heartland area, they are more like family oriented, I would say. Yeah. So a lot of people, they buy for their own stay.
Yeah, so own
Yeah.
stay demand generally for all these heartland are very, very strong.
Especially when we are in the heartland area, we have more BTO, we have more EC. These are the people who actually, potential upgraders. Basically, they bought the houses at a very,
Affordable.
I would say affordable, I would say cheap price. And then after 5-year NOP, they got a decent amount of cash, 200, 300, 400, 500, which can easily help them upgrade to something better nearby.
Yeah. So I agree. So actually that also links us to actually the second point lah, which is location actually with no recent supply or launches also garner very strong participation. So because like what you mentioned, because there are so many HDB upgraders or families who are looking to upgrade from their HDBs, so there are actually a lot of pent up demand, especially at areas whereby there are no recent new launches. So you will take for example the Clementi site. When was the last time there was a new site that came up? It's actually quite a long while ago, which is Clermont, correct or not?
Well, Clermont was quite a while back already.
Yeah, quite a while. Probably 2-3 years back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also for the Champion Way one, because previously you do not have any new launches at that area as well. So I think the same goes for actually Toa Payoh, that site. Because I think the last one that came up was Gem Residences.
Yeah.
That was also very long ago, correct or not? So on top of that, I think one of the things that we also notice is the lower cost outlay is also plays a very crucial role in leading to a better participation rate lah. So if you were to see based on the land bid, you see for Clementi, generally the bid prices are actually hovering about 500 plus to 600 plus million. So generally, developer appetite for this kind of land size with this kind of prices is still generally palatable lah, easy to digest. And then after that, Lorong one, the Woodland one, which is about 200 plus million, is also something I think the developer is easy to digest as well lah. That's why it's also garnering quite a fair bit of interest. So that's why the Toa Payoh one being a bigger site, right? The bid price was like close to 800 plus 900 plus million. So that could also be the reason why, despite being a heartland, despite being having no recent new launches at that area, the participation rate for Lorong 1 actually is not as active lah compared to the other two that I mentioned.
So if you look into the developer's profile when they bid for a land, you realize that at heartland area or land that are bigger, you see really big developers or renowned developers coming in. For example, let's take a look at the one at Clementi Avenue 1. So we have MCL, CDL, Qingjian, All Green, Gogo Land, Hoi Hub. I think these 6 developers, if you mention to anybody that owns property or into private property market, you'll probably know them. So these are the people who, like what you mentioned, got budget,
They got budget.
able to solo.
Yeah, then the Champion Way one being like so-called the lower bid prices one, right? Then you see all the smaller developer
Correct.
like Innova Investment, I don't know who. JBE, actually I never really heard before.
Hey, you are don't know but it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fair lah. It's fair, correct.
Yeah, because generally as agent, usually when we market property, right,
Correct.
sometimes we also introduce who are the developers.
Correct.
So renowned one, of course, people will trust more, recognize more. And
So,
then
so for property agents that don't recognize some of the names here, please, developers, don't be offended. Probably we didn't do enough homework. Also, but we're just saying in general, if consumers do not know who are these developers, generally it's not the ones that have been in the market for very long, like the one that bidded for Clementi Avenue 1. Something very interesting that we can discuss about that people might not know. So okay, whenever a government announce certain piece of land to be sold, okay, so now we need to think
from developer point of view.
In the shoes of developer. So what are the considerations for developers before they submit their bids?
So just now I mentioned about the cost outlay for developer when we are trying to spot the trend. Why are developers less likely to try to bid for land that are bigger with higher cost outlay? I think one of the key things that people do not realize is when developer purchase a piece of land, right, they are not just paying for that piece of land. They also have this thing called the ABSD. That
Additional
buyer
stamp
duty. So currently, developer actually have to pay 40% of ABSD upfront.
On top of their purchase.
Yeah, purchase price. So they have to pay 40% ABSD. And when they successfully complete and sell all the unit within 5 years from acquisition date, right, then they can claw back the 35%. So actually this policy in a way is to discourage developer from land hoarding lah. Like purposely buy the land ready, then
I keep the land.
hold back the launches.
I keep the land for 5 years.
Then and this create artificial housing scarcity and drive home prices up. So this is what the government don't want lah. So that's why there's this policy. So given all this restriction and money at stake, right? So how is that going to affect developer? So I think there are some risks and consideration for them lah. Number one, development and project size. So because of this 5 years rule whereby they have to sell all and complete and sell within all these 5 years, I think developer also have this consideration. If I buy something that is too big, am I able to actually sell finish and complete within 5 years?
Yep.
VS if I buy a smaller one.
Yep.
Correct or not? And then another thing like I say is a capital upfront. I buy a big project, which means I have to fork out more money also. So development project size plays a crucial role in developer consideration. And another one I think we just now mentioned already, demand. So areas without new developments or an extended period of time whereby there isn't any upcoming launches. For example, Toa Payoh GLS, for example, Clermont, Champion Way. So all this, why do we have such strong bidder from recognizable developers? Is also because of this specific reason that I'm talking about. So, and then I think a lot of people also must be thinking, funny now I think the market sentiment not very good. Right? You agree with me? Market sentiment not very good.
To me, real estate is always good lah. But because there are more concerns, I would say more questions on the ground before they make a decision.
Yeah.
Regardless resale or new.
Yeah. I think market sentiment generally is not as strong as before. Generally quite weak. If you were to look at some report it's not as rosy as what we maybe the past few years. So a lot of people must be thinking, how now the market sentiment is not good, yet why are we still seeing such a bullish bidding from all the developers? So I think we also have to consider there is this thing called the lead time. So when the developer actually bid for this land and they inquire, right, they don't launch immediately correct or not? So how long do they need to prep for launch?
For example, like Botany, like the land bid was March 2022, right? Yeah, but it was launched in March 2023, 1 year later. That took them about 1 year to prep.
Yeah.
And another 4 years.
But actually this shows a lot. For example, the government already give developers a 5-year deadline, right? But the developers, they are not in a rush to quickly launch their development, which means that these developers are very confident they can sell off within 5 years.
Because ultimately, it's also for developer point of view, it's never about the current market sentiment. It's always a forward projection of 1 to 1.5 years time. How will the market be like? Especially today context. Can you imagine all these sites that are being bidded and they are going to be launched somewhere maybe end 2024 to early 2025. Recently, we've seen news saying that the rate cuts is going to happen second quarter of 2024. So I think those developers that actually bid for this land will actually have a higher chance of having a decent sales during that period of time.
Because when decrease of interest rate will actually trigger some buyers that have been holding out their purchase during the 4% interest rate basically.
So given that all the risks or consideration factors that I actually mentioned above, right? So how are developers actually mitigating the above? So for example, some go for smaller project, which also means some en bloc projects that are less attractive in today's context also because they are risky
because for en bloc, the process is very tedious as well for developers, very lengthy. Even today, you can start the en bloc process. It will take how long? 1 year, 2 years. The whole thing will take very long. So they will rather go for GLS, straightforward. Bid, they win. They'll start to plan how to market it and sell it.
So if let's say there's this particular site that is very, very, very attractive for developers, right? But because it's big, the cash outlay is very huge. Which also means higher risk. So I think some of the developers actually go through joint venture to actually lower the risk each party actually has to bear also. So I'm not too sure also whether do you realize something about the recent land bidding also. something the government is deliberately doing. So if you see the 3 sites that was actually tendered, right, the tender closing date for the 3 sites are actually the same, 7 November 2023. So I think what the government is also trying to do is, they are trying to force developers to actually be prudent in their bidding also.
Yep.
Yeah.
And their allocation of funds and resources lah. So can you imagine so let's say, so people are asking, how come you put the tender on the same day? I will share this example also. Imagine there's actually 3 sites. The tender closing date is actually on the first week, second week, and third week. Okay, so imagine the first developer who failed to secure any land parcel during week 1 and week 2. Correct or not? So out of desperation, what will they do?
They will go all out for the third one.
Third one.
Yeah. So it will unintentionally inflate the prices as well. So and that's going to set precedents for other developers to actually follow for future land bid prices lah. So I think that's also what the government do not want also.
And I think there's quite a few things that the government have been doing to sort of control the developers, in the sense not to come in and rashly bid for any land. So I think recently one thing that was being introduced is actually the harmonization of GFA.
So actually, in June this year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the government implemented this harmonization, and it affects the bidding price of the developers. So what do I mean? Like previously, there are different agencies like URA, SLA, BCA, and SCDF. So they will adopt different definition of measuring the floor area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some count the external wall, some count the internal wall, some count the middle of the
So
wall.
basically, no standard.
Yeah,
There's
no
no
standard.
standardization.
Yeah, because there's no standard, right? So this created a lot of confusion among a lot of people.
Yeah.
But then more importantly, right, we have to look at, because of this harmonization change, there's a absence of the previously available free areas for home buyers. Now, right, the strata area, including your aircon ledge, your curtain walls, all these are excluded from GFA previously one, but they are now being integrated into this calculation. Yeah. So this would mean for developers, right, it will reduce the total sellable area, that they can actually sell for the project.
Yeah.
Oh.
Maybe
Yeah.
I just give example lah.
Okay.
So previously, if a developer buy maybe 1,000 square feet of land
Yep.
to build, they are given actually about 7% GFA, 7% bonus GFA for balcony. Then they are also given some bonus GFA for AC ledge. Correct or not? So when developer buy 1,000 square feet of land, they actually get probably a bonus of maybe 1,001 that they sell to consumer. Correct? But after this harmonization, right, the developer, number one, instead of having, when they pay for that 1,000, they are actually only getting probably about 1,007. Correct or not? Their sellable land actually reduces. Correct or not? So the AC ledge that previously was given them for free, now they have to actually include in the land they actually bought, which means the sellable land that they get is actually much lesser. So what do developer do? Is either but for developer being a for-profit organization,
Yep.
so how do they actually maintain their revenue? They actually have to charge the consumer a higher PSF
Yep.
But I think today prices are really quite high, very hard to accept. So how are developers actually mitigating this?
Yep.
I think for developer, the easiest way is to reduce their bid price.
Yeah.
So by reducing the price that they are bidding for by probably that 3-4%,
Yeah.
they are also able to actually counter this effect of harmonizations also.
So basically, instead of bidding blindly, they have already factored in the cost
The
that they will
additional
need,
cost.
the additional cost they need.
And also reduction in margin because of this harmonization
Correct.
into their bidding also.
So we realize that when it comes to topic like this, government land sales, and comes to government, we are very serious. Right? Unlike our previous podcast, or we can ha, we can laugh about it, because to us it's very important. Because for GetListed, we don't just do selling. So there are many times that buyers come to us and say, hey, today I want to buy this property, I want to buy this new launch. Hey, man, I just saw this land bid, how much is the development is going for? So in order for us to put our clients ahead of the market, of course we need to do homework like this. Because there are buyers that haven't been buying property for maybe 10 years, 20 years, whatever their understanding is back then.
Backdated.
So what we really need to do is firstly, we need to understand everything first. So whenever the clients have any concern or any question, we are able to advise accordingly. So example, let's say if today we have a resale buyer that wants to buy Boon Keng area, for example. So they'll be asking, this condo, the last transacted was at this per square feet. Currently, the owner is asking $200 above the per square feet.
Does it make sense?
Does it make sense? So, but the thing is, we already know how much the Arcady is going to sell for.
Arcady is the upcoming launch.
Launch, the freehold development that is coming. So with that, we already know in the upcoming next few months, I think Arcady is going to launch in January. Any transaction done in that development will definitely bring up the price index in Boon Keng itself. So resale owners or resale sellers, they're also very smart one. They will use this as a selling point. So this is going to be the future price tag.
Ours is cheaper.
You better buy now, because once the transaction is out, I'm going to call for even higher, right? So these are the things that we can preempt our buyers first. So example, for Arcady, if for Arcady this certain price tag is not something that you can accept, then we better grab something before the launch, and then right on to the price increment in that whole estate itself after being an owner over there. So if you are a buyer who is scouting around the area, regardless new or resale, or basically you're just preparing for your next move, do contact us, because we really take every single transaction very seriously, especially when it comes to purchase. Because you know why, no? When you buy a property through us, who's the one that is going to sell it?
Us.
Of course, right? That's what we want. We want you to remember. I bought this property from GetListed agent, and because of their analysis and because of their forecast, because of all their advice, my property have actually been in a very good position in the market. So when I sell, who do I look for? Us again. So we will make sure that you buy the best possible or the wisest choice in the market, so that when you want to sell, you are able to sell. All right. So if you like what we're sharing here, I think Zane and Jenelle did a super in-depth explanation as much as we can in this podcast. How long did you guys take to prepare?
2 days.
2 days.
2 full days.
2 full days. Because I mean, you can't see this on the screen, but actually we have a Google Word document that is like 4-5 pages. So we really want to make sure that every information we give is as accurate as possible. So if you like what we have been doing and what we have been sharing with you, do follow us. Subscribe button will be here. Continue to click it. Please share this video and look forward for more coming from GetListed. See you. If you are thinking how the current government if you are wondering how the recent land bid will affect your prices, this is a podcast for you. Okay.